Ahoy mateys, Captain Eric here, and welcome to part 3 of my Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl Ultimate Dream roster. Now, if you haven't watched part 1 or part 2 of this series, that isn't a big deal. You can watch those after this video, before this video, whenever you'd like. And today we're going over the characters of the base roster I've created, from characters from 2010 up until today, along with a few other assist trophy ideas, a few other levels. Moving on to Butch Hartman's third Nicktoon Tough Puppy. The show first premiered on October 2nd, 2010, and ran for 3 seasons of 60 episodes. First off, let's go over Jerry Trainor's second spot in this list, Dudley Puppy. A formidable fighter, a obvious choice from this show. It centers around spies, so there's a lot of characters to choose from. The same can be said for Kitty Catswell, the second main character of Tough Puppy. Both characters are formidable opponents without any weaponry. Their moveset plausibility immediately skyrockets given the wide variety of weapons you could pull from on the show. As far as assists go, the first character to come to mind for me was Keswick, the overall brains in Tough headquarters, the one that makes all of the gadgets. I think he would make an overall funny assist to have on the field. The same could be said for the supervillain Verminia Snaptrap, although if you could pull another character out of Tough Puppy to have as a fighter, I think he would fill that slot. On top of those two characters, I would still love to see some interaction from the chief of Tough headquarters in the background of some Tough Puppy level. He's such a funny character and has such a funny, boastful personality that I would like to see him throughout a level more than I would as an assist, where you're only sprinkling his appearances throughout. Like, I would probably use a Tough Puppy level a ton if it included the chief in the background. Next up, we have The Legend of Korra, the spiritual sequel to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Takes place in the same universe, but also takes place at a later time after the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender, following a future Avatar in the timeline. Korra, the main character of the entire series, is already pretty much ready to go as the Avatar at the beginning of the series, and it's really impactful in that way because we went through Aang's transformation from this small, meek airbender to eventually achieving the Avatar state, and then we start this new story with this new character who has pretty much used all of the elements in their various ways and already has a step up above Aang at the start of her story here. The show is still created by Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Koietzko, and it ran for 4 seasons of 52 episodes. Other than Korra, I thought that Amon was going to be an obvious choice. The first big bad that we run into in The Legend of Korra is one that really left a mark that I think a lot of fans still remember to this day, and is a powerful character to bring on to the fighting field here. Since I mainly pulled from the very first season of The Legend of Korra, I figured that Republic City would make an obvious choice as a backdrop for a level of some sort.
Wow, look at this place.
Next up, we're talking about one of my favorite pieces of entertainment of all time, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've been a fan of their comic books, their animated series, their films, even the Michael Bay films. I mean, come on, that second one had Bebop and Rocksteady, and we almost had CM Punk as Casey Jones, but we still had Stephen Amell, and Arrow is cool, but hey. There's a lot to cover here. Originally created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had their start as a comic book series, which eventually led to an animated television series, which then it blew up all over the world, and it brought the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to the big screen.
This is a 10. The tab's 13.
You're 2 minutes late, dude.
Ah, come on. I couldn't find a place.
Wise man say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
Into toy stores, into the cereal aisle, into live shows, into albums, and to tapes, and really bad costumes, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were just a cultural phenomenon, and they have endured for decades as popular entertainment. Every animated series has been a knock out of the park. On October 19th, 2009, Viacom acquired the entire license to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles over from Mirage Studios, except apparently Volume 4 of the comic series, which Mirage just indefinitely owns, but as far as everything else is concerned, it's all owned by Viacom, and they pretty much slid the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into the Nickelodeon brand. Now, the Turtles were heavily represented in the first trailer for Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, and they were heavily using the 1987 version of the Turtles, but here's the thing. I think it would be incredibly smart to make separate fighters of all of the turtles, but have alternate costumes based off each and every one of their iterations on television. It's that simple, people. And I'll take away the rise of the Ninja Turtles there so we can see we got Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael, the 4 core Ninja Turtles. Now, of course, you can't go wrong with adding in Master Splinter, but at the same time, you also can't go wrong with adding in the Shredder. And honestly, if you've had your doubts with me thus far, I mean, think about Shredder versus Ozai in this fighting game. I mean, just having those two characters, I mean, now in a realistic sense, Shredder might not stand a chance against Ozai, but, you know, just in terms of a fighting game, just where they're both on an even playing field, Ozai and Shredder, adding in Mr. Crocker. I mean, that's a bit manic now. We need to add in another villain on top of that. We can add Dib in there if you consider him a villain. Some people don't.
Come in, Shredder!
What perfect timing! I'm just about to destroy the turtles!
Oh, no, you don't. I want that pleasure to be all mine!
He would be my ultimate choice as an assist. He's my favorite character from the Ninja Turtles universe, but you can't go wrong with Bebop and Rocksteady as well. They're the best henchmen to ever exist in media. You can't go wrong with some Bebop and Rocksteady comedic relief in the background. You could also bring in the Bebop and Rocksteady of the 2012 series. I enjoyed those characters as well, and they're fun and different iterations of what we know and expect of with Bebop and Rocksteady. On top of all of that, using either version of April O'Neil in any way would be a necessity. And of course, we can't forget Casey Jones. Honestly, if I had a preference, I'm going to pick the 1990 film version of Casey Jones as the one that I would love to assist on the battlefield. But in reality, you can't go wrong with any version of Casey Jones. You can have the 87 maniacal version of Casey Jones. You can have the 2007 CGI version of Casey Jones. Next up, we're covering the Nickelodeon sitcom The Thundermans, created by Jed Spinger, and the show ran for 4 seasons and 98 episodes, a sitcom about superheroes. Now, as I've mentioned in previous parts, this was going to be superhero heavy, and when Nickelodeon has ready-to-go superheroes, in the case of Max and Phoebe Thunderman, they're just going to make obvious choices here on the list. Through my small research of the show, I found that both characters pretty much wielded the same capabilities. So for this list, they are considered one character just with alternate costumes. And once again, hey, if you think they should be separate characters, just remove one character you don't like and make them separate characters. It's that easy. As far as assists from the show goes, you don't need to look any further than the other members of the Thundermans family. I mean, look at them. They're just ready to go, ready to assist. If I could have one choice, the only reason I have seen most of the Thundermans that I have is because of one character, voiced by Master Shake himself, Dana Schneider. I'm talking about the one, the only, Dr. Colosso. Apparently they have this supervillain that they turned into a rabbit, and then they just have him, he's like forced to live with this family. I don't know if they openly don't know how to not change him back or what the deal is, but either way, anything involving Dana Schneider, I'm going to be a fan of.
Dr. Colosso! You're just going to let them lower me into a vat of hermit crabs?
When you put it that way, yep.
Next up, we're talking about Sanjay and Craig, created by Jay Howell, James Dershberger, and Andreas Troff. The show ran for 3 seasons, made up of 60 episodes. Now, you can watch fart joke comedies and then also tune into insightful shows like Hey Arnold, which will occasionally throw in a fart joke, but, like, when did this become a negative thing on Nickelodeon? I don't understand. From the few episodes I've seen of Sanjay and Craig, I've slightly enjoyed it. I mean, hey, maybe I should watch the whole thing and it would change my perspective, but I don't know. I think these characters would also make for a wonderful duo. Now, they would play as an unconventional duo. In the same way as those other characters, it would still be Sanjay using Craig as a weapon, but Craig being a snake just kind of opens up the possibilities of that into just crazy levels. Like, what can you do with a kid and a snake? Like, you could make an incredible moveset, I guess. And if people are going to get upset about farts, then his taunt should just outright be a fart, like Wario does it in Super Smash Bros., and everybody's okay with that. When did farts become a bad thing? From the amount of Sanjay and Craig I've watched, the character of Tough Lips is the first character that came to mind when it came to an assist. In their world, he is just kind of like their Fonzie-esque character, although he's not really like the Fonz in any way, shape, or form. I am sure you could have fun with that character as an assist. A lot of the locations in Sanjay and Craig would make wonderful backdrops for levels, but the Frycade would be my choice. Once again, as I've mentioned with other levels, it's an easy way to showcase other characters in the background through the windows. You don't even have to model their characters. They could just be really high quality PNGs just behind the glass looking at the other characters, and you just put slight animation work on them and it looks like they're real cartoons. Next up, we're covering another Schneider Bakery creation, Henry Danger, another sitcom about superheroes running at the same time as the Thundermans, and both shows were running pretty well. It's funny because I remember at the time there was all of this talk about this oversaturation of the superhero genre, and then here's Nickelodeon putting two superhero sitcoms on the air at the same time, even eventually leading up to a crossover special, and it was just success for everybody. The Thundermans had a great run. Henry Danger had a great run, which started on July 26th, 2014, and went on for 5 seasons and 121 episodes. Shouldn't be no surprise, as I've mentioned, this was going to be, once again, superhero heavy. Of course, we have the characters here of Captain Man and Kid Danger, both of which have super similar movesets, and we're going to have one fighter here, but then 2 different characters just on top of that. Out of all of the clips of the show, Benjaru's the toddler was the one character that constantly made me laugh, so it also just made me a fan of him as both a voice actor and an actor. And so just a big shout out to Benjaru here. I would also like to see Schwaz used as an assist of some sort. He is the character that makes all of the gadgets that Captain Man and Kid Danger use. And I mean, just look at that photo. I mean, the assist could honestly be that this photo just comes out and covers the screen for like 10 seconds. Next up, we're talking about one of the biggest Nicktoons of all time, The Loud House, created by Chris Savino. The Loud House is still ongoing to this day. It currently has 5 seasons and 123 episodes, an upcoming movie on Netflix, an upcoming live-action TV movie, and the Loud House spinoff, The Casagrandes, continues to dominate as well. So both shows running in the same universe, just big successes for Nickelodeon on all fronts. So it's no surprise to see that Loud House main character Lincoln Loud was announced in the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl game. And of course, I'd have to put him here. Regardless on my lack of Loud House viewing and knowledge, I have to acknowledge that it is a massive Nickelodeon show. It is massively popular. It's endured in popularity, even though I feel like it's kind of lowered a little bit over the last few years, and maybe it's coming closer to its end, but still, I mean, for a Nickelodeon show to kind of explode like this in the modern day, I mean, people thought they would never see it, and here comes the Loud House and just explodes on the market. Now, another Loud House character was already announced in Lucy Loud, and I kept her here as well. She seems like an interesting character, and she just sticks out like a sore thumb. Now, I have seen Clyde duke it out in the Nickelodeon Super Brawl game before, so he's a character that could make a interesting fighter as well. Other than someone like Clyde making a viable fighter, as far as assists go, you could pull from literally any other character from the Loud House. They could make a Loud House fighting game based off of just the characters from the show alone. There's so many of them, including all of the characters from the Casagrandes who you could also have in this. Of course, we have already seen the house from the Loud House show up as a level in the new Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl game. Doing what I've said for a lot of the levels here, having one central location but using the windows of the house to showcase other characters who may not physically be in the game as playable or even anything sort of an assist trophy, but they're there in spirit, thriving in their level as you're just fighting on the front lawn. And lastly, we are talking about the 74th fighter on my roster for this ultimate Nickelodeon fighting experience, helming from the newest Nicktoon, Middlemost Post, which premiered on July 9th, 2021. Created by John Trabick III, we are talking about the one, the only, Parker J. Cloud. If you have seen any of Middlemost Post at all in any of its media, any of the trailers, any of the teasers, you will see that Parker J. Cloud is an interesting little character, and for as early as this is as a show, you could make an interesting moveset with his powers and abilities, maybe even throwing boxes around the stage. The other main characters of the show, Angus and Russell, would make absolutely excellent assists in this regard, and even the land of Mount Middlemost would make an absolutely gorgeous backdrop to what I would imagine a floating stage which just covers all of the different colored areas of Mount Middlemost. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 74 fighters in this just completely bonkers idea of a Nickelodeon fighting game. Look, it would be great if they ever got to 74 fighters in a Nickelodeon fighting franchise, but let's just pump the brakes on that. Right now, we should just be happy with whatever they can deliver us in Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, but hey, you know what? Pie-in-the-sky ideas here. Seeing this entire roster laid out in front of me as is a great feeling. I feel like I've covered a lot of different bases of Nickelodeon here, and I'm sure you're probably thinking of a show or two that I have forgotten about in some way, shape, or form, but there are the extras that I have talked about that I've kept up until the end after we got through the based fighters. I can go as wacky as I want with choices, I can go as simple and safe as I want with choices, but this character just made sense, but then they made even more sense as a DLC character given the circumstances. And I am talking about the one, the only, one of the very first Nicktoons to exist, Doug. Created by Jim Jenkins, Doug first premiered all the way on August 11th, 1991. It's one of the first Nicktoons. The show ran on Nickelodeon originally for 4 seasons and 52 episodes, and apparently Nickelodeon had 2 years of an open option to make more Doug episodes, in which if they decided not to, the company Jumbo Pictures were then allowed to apparently shop Doug around to other studios. They were eventually purchased by Walt Disney Studios, which in turn made Doug and his entire cast of characters Disney characters. Now, Nickelodeon does retain rights to the original 52 Doug episodes, but currently Doug is still owned by Walt Disney, and they're not doing anything with this character at all. Aside from a few Funko Pops that have released in the last few years, that has just been it for Doug merchandise. Maybe they've released a t-shirt here and there, but this is just a license that Disney is sitting on. It would be pretty easy to walk up to Disney for this character that they're literally not making much money on to say, hey, we want to sell this character as a DLC character, and you'll get X amount of the percentage of the sales of this character, and boom, it's just free money in their hands, and it gets Doug back in the world of Nickelodeon, at least for one game. But not specifically Doug, I'm talking Quail Man. From the beginning, I always said I was going to go superhero crazy, and we can't forget one of the very first superheroes on Nickelodeon. I mean, we have Artie, the strongest man in the world, the very first superhero on Nickelodeon, followed by Powdered Toast Man, the very first animated superhero.
Help! Quail Man! Help! Yes, I'll save you, Patty. Give me the girl and nobody gets hurt.
Then we have Quail Man, the very first superhero alter ego for a Nicktoon that we have. Quail Man is beloved. It's one of the most iconic parts of Doug. I imagine you can also get Quail Dog as an assist that could be added into the game. Now, of course, going off the way Super Smash Bros. Releases their DLC characters, each character comes with their own level, and instead of having a Quail Man-esque city level, because we could probably get a city level from another show, I think it would be wise to get the Honker Burger as a backdrop. It would be an easy way to get Skeeter back there beatboxing, Patty Mayonnaise walking by, and Quail Man can have some hearts come out of his head when she's walking by. You can even have one of my favorite cartoon characters, Roger Klotz, just laughing. And honestly, if we can get an extra assist out of this show, Roger Klotz is essentially Nickelodeon's answer to Waluigi. In terms of both how he would be as an assist, just this nagging guy who wants to stomp on your feet, but also on the fact that I would kind of want to play as him too, because I would love to see Roger square it up against all of the other Nickelodeon characters. Now, since I brought up a character that Nickelodeon doesn't own, we might as well talk about other characters that Nickelodeon does own and just bring up some other pie-in-the-sky DLC ideas, one of which is, of course, Garfield. That is right, Nickelodeon now owns Garfield and has pretty much put him within the Nickelodeon family very early on, just as they did with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Viacom acquires a studio, acquires a character, and then just says, okay, they are now retroactively a Nicktoon. This honestly isn't a bad thing because Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has a very special fan base, just as much as Garfield has a very special fan base, and he is a very simple character created by Jim Davis, and that has endured on for generations upon generations, stemming from the newspaper comics all the way to television shows, live action movies, so much Garfield merchandise. You'd have to devote an entire home to collect Garfield merchandise. His popularity endures in 2021, and I think you can make a viable moveset out of Garfield, and honestly, he's there. Nickelodeon owns him. We might as well throw him in there. I mean, in the same regard, since we're talking about characters that are owned by Viacom that Nickelodeon have access to, I am putting my foot down that if I'm allowing Garfield, I have to have my Nacho Libre in this game. Growing up with a love of lucha libre and professional wrestling, he eventually makes his way onto the main stage, and it's just literally, it's one of the greatest Nickelodeon movies of all time. Jack Black is a beloved actor, both online and offline, and of course he has a massive history with Nickelodeon, hosting its Kids' Choice Awards on many occasions. Honestly, we can't talk about Nacho without bringing up the villain of the movie, Ramses. As I've mentioned many times in this series, I'm a big fan of villain characters. Ramses is the perfect villain and arch rival for Nacho, and it would be a way to get an extra Lucha Libre character in this already insane fighting game. Now, this next batch of characters are extra assist characters that do not necessarily have any representation in the field of fighters. Some of these ideas are based off of pre-existing assist trophy characters in Super Smash Bros. I'm just going to move forward and bullet point these characters so that we can wrap this thing up. First up, I think Clarissa Deering spelling her name over the field with the letters being able to harm you, I think would be a funny idea and a nice homage to the opening of her show. Camp Counselor Kevin Ugly, I think would make sense to kind of throw down a pole into the ground with the shorts floating up in the air, although a Salute Your Shorts level would be fun as well, a level at Camp Anawana. I think Mikey from Nick Arcade should have some representation in these big Nickelodeon mashups. Nickelodeon has had a homegrown video game character in their licenses for all these years that they've never done anything with. I mean, if you were a fan of Nick Arcade, Mikey was a big part of that show. Of course, we can't talk about Nickelodeon game shows without talking about our boy Olmec, the stone guardian of the Hidden Temple, one of the co-host of Legends of the Hidden Temple alongside Kirk Fogg. Olmec is just this hulking figure that would just probably bring some sort of impending force wherever he is brought upon. Now, working Blue's Clues in this game works in many ways. As a level, I think it would be kind of fun to feature the Blue's Clues home interior as a place some of these characters duke it out. At the same time, I think Blue coming up and just covering the screen with paw prints would be a nice, fun way. I mean, Smash Brothers has Nintendogs as an assist trophy, so why can't Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl Ultimate have Blue? I do have to admit, I almost had Steve as a fighter at one point. I had him penciled in, and I couldn't for some reason. Dora the Explorer makes more sense fighting people than Steve from Blue's Clues. He just seems so innocent. I couldn't imagine him just pulling out a magnifying glass and smacking characters in the face with it. I just don't know. Dora, for some reason, gives off that vibe. I think utilizing Billy the Answerhead in some way, shape, or form would be an excellent idea. You can use the different words that come up to maybe say a different move to avoid using, or some different kind of ability, like don't use blocking, and if you block, you get hit with the secret, it's the secret slime action, and then you get slimed and it hurts you. You can find a way to incorporate Billy the Answerhead into the game. Of course, being a fan of the darker side of Nickelodeon, I would love to see both Zeke the Plumber and Zeebo the Clown from Salute Your Shorts and Are You Afraid of the Dark, respectively, used as assists in this game as well. For those of you who thought I missed out on Kablam, I didn't. As far as a fighter from Kablam, I really couldn't justify one, but man, did I really dive into Kablam in the assist and level category. First of which, Prometheus and Bob just running amok on the stage. You can definitely make them look like clay figures, just causing havoc. The Action League characters, you can have them as an assist, although one of the options I thought of was having maybe even the flesh as an item that you throw at another character, and whoever you throw him at gets bombarded by all of the other Action League Now characters. They get some damage and whatnot, or maybe they have to move around to wipe them off. It would be a fun little nod to the show, but also I think having a level that takes place within the pages of Kablam. I mean, Kablam itself, through its shows, is a comic book, so you could have those pages flipping and have homages to Action League Now and Prometheus and Bob and Life with Loopy, Sniz and Fondue, the Offbeats, and of course our hosts of the show, Henry and June. Now, we cannot have a game that includes interrupting assists without having the dancing lobsters come in. It's just not happening, people. Bring on the dancing lobsters. An interesting and deep cut character that I would put in as an assist is Eddie McDowd, a school bully that is turned into a dog and has to achieve 100 good deeds to get his human body back. I think it would be interesting to have Eddie come in as a dog. It's just this cycle that happens that Eddie McDowd, every time he comes out, every 100 bites, he'll turn back into a bully. But then when the bully comes to help, he punches one person and then is immediately transformed back into the dog. We didn't get to see the ending of this show, so I just think in this kind of way, it would just be a funny little homage to that Nickelodeon show. For the As Told by Ginger fans out there who may have been disappointed by the lack of fighter representation, I really felt that the best case scenario for that show was using Carl and Hoodsie here, just throwing out chemicals all over the stage, either covering the screen and using that mechanic again, or they could just be covering the stage in some sort of slippery chemical goo. I do think that the eyeball jar would make an interesting item as well, throwing that at somebody. Maybe there's some effect where they're just covered in sludge or a stink that hurts them for an extended period of time. Going from talking about an eyeball in a jar to Mr. Meaty might seem like I was just talking about the same show, but no, they're completely different shows. Mr. Meaty, I think, would make a wonderful backdrop level that you just fight in front of. You can have Josh and Parker in front of the cash register there, not really doing much, maybe just watching the fight. I do think if there is one character to pull out of the Mr. Meaty universe as a solid assist character, that would be Doug, the security guard from Mr. Meaty. He is one of the funniest characters on the show, and I would just love to utilize him in some way beyond a Mr. Meaty level. I do think the cats from Cat Scratch would also make an interesting assist. I think even in the intro of the show, they are seen with a giant monster truck, so imagine if they just come barreling in this giant monster truck on the stage, just crushing all of your opponents. Now that is an assist. A short-lived Nickelodeon show, The X's, a show about a family of secret spies you think would be ripe for the fighter side of things, but unfortunately I just left them out in terms of other characters. Honestly, if you took out some of the live-action characters, you could fit in some X's representation, but my favorite character from that show is Chris Hardwick's Glowface here, who he causes so much mayhem, and he's not necessarily good at it, so having him here in some regard to assist in some way, just to bring on some damage to other characters, would make a lot of sense. It would be a fun way to get Chris Hardwick to ruin his voice. And lastly, as far as extra assists that I came up with on the fly, I thought, of course, of Bessie and Happy from the Mighty Bee. There were so many different options and so many different things you could do from that show. Now, out of all of the assist characters that I have mentioned, Bessie honestly is in the top 5 characters that could be made from assist to fighter instantly. So if you just take out all of the live action characters, she would easily have a spot amongst them. As far as extra levels are concerned, I'm a big sucker of the old school Nickelodeon game shows, so of course Double Dare as a backdrop would make a lot of sense. You can even use the newer Double Dare set if you really wanted to, because that blue tile is iconic no matter what era of Double Dare you're watching. Now, of course, if we could have anything from Double Dare, I would have to say that having a level based off of the Slopsticle course would be the best course of action. It's the best part of the show. It's the most iconic. You can have the giant nose as a set piece. You can have the slide of ice cream as a set piece. You can have a lot of fun with that. Maybe every time you go to the stage, there's a few different rotating set pieces so that the Slopsicle Course is a little bit different each and every time you go to the stage. You can also have a Nick Arcade level, one that takes place inside of the video zone, which was, of course, the ending set piece of the entire game show. But honestly, if I was making this game, I would have a level based off of the video challenge area. The video challenge was my favorite part of Nick Arcade because it was an easy way to see some of your favorite video games being played on the television. Routinely, you would see both Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as one of the playable options in the video challenge. Now, what I would do with this level, and this is just my own idea, but instead of having other video games featured on the different video challenge screens, I would have a bunch of old school Nickelodeon video games running on those screens. Now, just for a second, can you imagine the Aggro Crag from Nickelodeon Guts as a level in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl? Now, if they're not going to take that idea, I certainly will in my dream game. If anybody remembers the Aggro Crag, it is one of the most exciting parts of not only Nickelodeon Guts, but of anything on Nickelodeon at that time. I mean, you talk about big finales for their game shows. The Slopsicle Course is fantastic. The Hidden Temple is unforgettable. But the Aggro Crag itself is an experience. Speaking of which, the Hidden Temple itself would make an excellent level. Thinking of the Great Cave Offensive from the Super Smash Bros. Series, I know that people don't necessarily like that level because of its size, but could you imagine a Hidden Temple level where each and every room was fightable in? I think Hollywood Arts as a backdrop level, it's one that would be easy to feature a bunch of different characters from the show, since it is the school that all of the characters, including their teacher, Mr. Sikowitz, attend. So I gotta be honest with you, and this is just one last surprise before we end, I almost had Rex from Victorious as a fighter, just thinking of giving him a completely generic, like, Mii Brawler type moveset. And when I had him, I then thought about the fact that I have Cousin Skeeter already in the game, and I thought, oh man, I have these two puppets, which then almost brought Parker and Josh from Mr. Meaty from the assist column over to the fighter column, so that I could have this puppet federation running amok in this Nickelodeon fighting game. And then I just went back on all of those ideas, because if there was one puppet that I could get most of you to agree with me that would make a viable fighter, it was Cousin Skeeter. I went with all of my eggs in that basket. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe more people would rather have Rex. Maybe more people would rather have Parker and Josh from Mr. Meaty. I don't know, but that's all the puppet talk I have for this episode. And that is it. That is not only the 74 fighters that I would have in a Nickelodeon All-Star Ultimate game, but of course any of the extra assists and levels that I came up with. Give me your honest thoughts. What would your rosters look like? What differences would you make with the characters that I've brought with you today? Do you have any roster movements, any assist to fighter, any fighter to assist moves that you would make? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to see all of them. I would love to see any of the changes you would make, because they may inspire future changes down the road that I make to this roster. As always, if you like any of the content I make, any way that you see fit in supporting me is as always appreciated. Thank you for coming aboard on this adventure. My name is Captain Eric. We will see you next time.